So how do we get this out of the body? Number one, you've got to starve it. What's its favourite food? The favourite food basically is sugar. Yeast loves sugar, and it also is fed by yeast as well. Now, if someone has a yeast presence in their body, and the most common ones are a vaginal itch, anal itch, athlete's foot, rashes. It can go further to gut problems. It can go further to psoriasis, to eczema, etc., etc. In fact, someone said, "What's the signs of a yeast presence in the body?" I said, "How long's a piece of string?" You know, there's huge amounts, and it depends on our strengths and our weaknesses, our lifestyle, etc., etc. That's why you're the doctor. And so if someone comes to me wanting to eliminate yeast out of the body, I say go on very low fruit. Say Granny Smith apple and grapefruit. In my book there are programs for it. But in particular in this lecture we'll go one step further. What about someone that has cancer? Well, if someone has cancer, conquering cancer I call it, no fruit for 6 weeks. And sometimes this program is called the sledgehammer program because it's designed to give a sledgehammer approach to cancer, to really knock it out. Dr. Otto Warburg in the 40s got a Nobel Prize for proving that cancer loves an environment with high sugar and no oxygen, and there's a part of your cell that runs like that. Let's go to the CBD, and I'll be pursuing this more in other lectures. Once the glucose goes into the body, there's a 20-step pathway, and this 20-step pathway that processes the glucose gives 2 units of energy, and it's an anaerobic. Anaerobic means no oxygen. Now the end result of the 20-step pathway produces a chemical form of glucose called pyruvate, and pyruvate gets fed into what's called the powerhouse, because the 8-step pathway gives us 36 units of energy. And this is the aerobic pathway, meaning the oxygen pathway. Now this 20-step pathway is very fast. It consumes huge amounts of glucose, and this is where a cancer cell runs. No oxygen, lots of sugar. When this pathway is being used, and this is a slow pathway, it uses a lot of oxygen, and it can run without high sugar because it takes a little while to get down there. Can you see that? Everything we eat has sugar, everything we eat. But the high fruit, high sugars, one lady said to me, I know what was feeding my cancer. She said, I used to make pavlovas for church. 16 cups of white sugar in a pavlova that big. Think of that next time someone offers you a slice of pavlova. Eat the fruit on top. So this is what Dr. Otto Warburg got a Nobel Prize for, showing that cancer cells basically are running up here. So you give a cancer cell lots of sugar, even a high fruit diet, it's just going to feed it. Cancer cannot live in the presence of oxygen. That's what Dr. Otto Warburg discovered. Now, check it out in the anatomy and physiology books. This is the glycolytic pathway. And the glycolytic pathway is an important pathway because that produces the fuel needed for the 8-step pathway. But if a lot of sugar's going in and no oxygen, can you see that this is just where it can stay running? And so to starve the cancer, cut out all the sugar, cut out all the yeast, and no fruit for 6 weeks. Now, because the person's eating a lot of vegetables, legumes, nuts, seeds, they're getting the fuel for the cell to run down there. That's how it should run. One lady said, but Barbara, fruit's good. I said, it's fantastic. But if a person's got cancer, they need to drastically reduce that for a period of time. What happens after 6 weeks? Then after 6 weeks they go on what I call stage 1 antifungal diet. They can start eating grapefruit, Granny Smith apples. They also go very low, which I'll cover when I look at diabetes. Excuse me. They go very low on the carbohydrates. But they can have lots of dal, legumes, lots of vegetables, nuts and seeds. Also, you've got to search the house that there's no mould. There can be no mould. When I was in the Qantas Club waiting for a flight, I was reading the Australian, and my attention was taken to an article. It said, "My doctor said I've got to get out of my house." I'm immediately interested. She was living in an apartment, and the apartment was mouldy. And then they investigated and found out that every apartment was mouldy. Whoever did the bathrooms didn't properly waterproof them. And then they discovered that one man, his whole kitchen roof fell in. It just totally rotted from mould. The people in that set of apartments were sick. There was a high cancer rate in there. And notice what this lady said, "My doctor says I've got to get out of my house." I thought, wow, it's refreshing to see there's an acknowledgement there. It's toxic stuff. Number 2. Basically, this is turning the tap off. Number 2, kill. I do think we've got to get away from the kill mentality, but there are herbs that will kill cancer, kill mould, and will not kill you. Isn't that good news? And in my book, there's a whole list of them. So things like olive leaf extract, grapefruit seed extract, Portiaco. Portiaco is a South American herb, strong antifungal killer. And in New Zealand, there's a herb that we Australians use called horopito. Have you heard of the herb horopito? That's very strong antifungal. What I suggest people do is a fortnight on that, a fortnight on this, a fortnight on that. You alternate it. Because of the body's amazing ability and the microbes' ability to adapt and adjust, you keep changing it. You keep changing it. So number 3, balance. Bring back the balance in the gastrointestinal tract and flood the gastrointestinal tract with the good guys. There's your probiotic. One of the questions I was asked, so I'll answer it now, is what probiotic brand do I suggest? I am not familiar with your New Zealand ones, but you basically just go for a vegetarian probiotic. And the best time to take it is 3/4 of an hour before breakfast, so that it'll go way down where it should go. Don't have it with your meal, because when you start eating, the valve at the bottom of your stomach, the pyloric sphincter, shuts, and your hydrochloric acid is really strong, and it can wipe out your probiotics, and you want them way down. So 3/4 of an hour before breakfast, early morning is the best time for them. Number 4, alkalize. Cancer and fungus love an acid environment. So it makes sense to alkalize the body. I have a book in my library called Cancer is a Fungus, and it's by an Italian oncologist named Dr. Tullio Simoncini. Now this oncologist's been having 90% success rate, and what he does, he injects the cancer with sodium bicarbonate. So sodium bicarbonate's the ultimate alkalizer. In fact, in the lining of your stomach there's sodium bicarb in case any stomach acid gets through, and your pancreas releases sodium bicarb to neutralize the acid coming out of the stomach. Did you know that? And in agriculture they will spray fungus on plants with sodium bicarb, and our grandmothers cleaned up mouldy bathrooms with sodium bicarb. So some people say, well, should I drink sodium bicarb? No, all that'll do is neutralize your stomach acid. And there's one place, and one place only, where in your body that should be acid. Students, stomach. It's only in an acid environment, as you'll find out on Friday night when we go on the journey, going through the gastrointestinal tract. Now, the only time I would suggest taking sodium bicarb would be if someone had stomach cancer, and then they could take it just before bed. You see, your hydrochloric acid is produced when you think, smell, taste food. Basically, the brain says, it's coming, come on guys, produce the hydrochloric acid. So when you wake up in the morning, it's not there and it's not active. It only comes when the brain says it's time, because it's got food messages from your eyes, from your nose, from your when you sit down to eat a meal. So when I sat down at lunchtime to a lovely plate of beans and chickpeas and cucumbers and avocados, my brain, without me even conscious of it, was already giving messages to my mouth and stomach to start producing the things. You see, your eyes and your smell are all giving messages into your brain. The brain's an amazing thing, headquarters. So what I'm talking about is alkalizing the tissues, basically where your cells function. And one of the most alkalizing substances you can take in is the lemon. You might say, no, lemon's acid. It's acid where it should be. That's its great digestive aid. Put it on your fruit salad, put it on your green salad. But when it is split in the gut and the minerals are separated and taken into the body, basically, and into the tissues, the lemon's high in alkalizing minerals, so it alkalizes the tissue. So lemon's acid where it should be, alkaline where it should be. That's why a great drink early in the morning is warm lemon water. Alkalizes the tissues. And lemon is a great liver herb. So alkalize. What are the most alkalizing foods? Dark, green, leafy vegetables are very alkaline. All your vegetables are alkalizing. And watermelon, well, if you've got cancer, or yes, we don't want watermelon. Again, fruits can be alkalizing, but if you've got cancer, you've got that balance. They're alkalizing, but they're actually feeding, the sugar's feeding the yeast, which actually gives off acid. So there's that whole balancer. When someone comes to our retreat wanting help to conquer cancer, we blend up wild greens with water and strain it, and they drink 1 litre of that a day. So green drinks. Green drinks alkalize from the inside. And now there's a specific treatment that we do at Misty, and it's the hyperbaric chamber. I don't know if you've heard of the hyperbaric chamber. The hyperbaric chamber was developed to help divers that had bends. You see, in air is 21% oxygen and about 79% nitrogen. So when the diver goes down under pressure and comes up too quickly, nitrogen goes into little gases in the joints, and that's the bends. You've probably heard of the bends. So they developed the hyperbaric chamber, which under pressure, oxygen is taken into the blood, the little nitrogens dissolve and they're broken up and they're breathed out. Cancer cannot live in the presence of oxygen, so going into a hyperbaric chamber increases the oxygen content. And when you got more oxygen, can you see that your cells are going to go down to here? And look, 18 times more energy the human body will experience when the cell can get down to what's called the mitochondria, the Krebs cycle. Henry's law states that under pressure, more gas goes into a liquid. So in the hyperbaric chamber, the gas is oxygen and the liquid is blood. So they're looking at hyperbaric chambers now in cancer treatment. Also, some hospitals have whole rooms that are hyperbaric chamber. We've just got like a tent that, you close it up and you pump it up and it's like a little pressurized tent. People come out and they've got lots of energy because they've got lots of energy and the cells get down to there. So that can be part of the treatment. And also we do sodium bicarbonate wraps. Dr. Tullio Simoncini injects it into the cancer. Well, we're not going to inject it into the cancer, but we do wraps. And when we do the wraps, it's quite a specialised treatment. It's about 2 kilos of sodium bicarbonate and 5 litres of water and half a cup of lemon juice, and then you dip towels in it and wring the towels out. Now, I've only just thought of it now, but we might be able to demonstrate that. Let's say we're doing natural remedies Wednesday, Thursday and Friday. Okay, well, we'll demonstrate that on the Friday one, because there's a little bit of preparation to be able to do that, but it's quite an intensive treatment. And the first hot towels wrapped around the torso and then covered, and then another hot wet towel around this leg, then that leg, then this arm, then that arm, and then it's all covered and they're wrapped up for 1 hour. So basically what's happening is, with someone that's got cancer, you're stopping everything that can feed it. You're taking the herbs that will kill off the yeast. You're balancing the gut with the probiotic. You're taking the green drinks, which are alkalizing from the inside, taking the hyperbaric, and that's not always possible, but if possible, and being wrapped up in the sodium bicarbonate wraps. And the sodium bicarb basically is coming in through the skin and helping to alkalize. When people come to our retreat, I say, basically cancer hasn't got a chance in your body. You see, the body heals itself. We've just got to give it the right conditions. So let me tell you the story about Elizabeth Cott that came to us 2.5 years ago. She's in her mid-60s and she had 3 large tumours in her abdomen. And her doctor said, "This is a very aggressive cancer. You have to begin chemotherapy straight away." She wanted to think about it. And someone gave her one of my lectures on cancer. So she rang us up and she booked in. She stayed for 2 weeks and we did 5, because they're 1 hour treatments, we did 5 wraps the first week and 5 wraps the second week. At that point we did not have our hyperbaric chamber. Stopped all fruit, went on lots of vegetables, legumes, nuts, seeds, gave her herbs to kill, balanced it. She had green drinks every day. She felt very good. She went back to the doctor 3 months later and he tested her. All her inflammatory markers had come down. She felt fantastic. After 3 months, she'd lost 10 kilos. She was looking great. She was off her blood pressure medication, all these other things fixed up. She was no longer on her sleep apnea machine. Doctor looked at her tests and he just said, keep doing what you're doing and I'll see you in 6 months. Now, what did he say 3 months before? You got to do something straight away. He didn't know what was going on. So she went back, and it was 6 months later, so we're looking at about almost a year time frame now. And he did a scan on her abdomen and one of the tumours had totally gone. She went back another 6 months later and the other tumour had totally gone. She said to me, "The other tumour's there, but it's not growing, it's not doing anything." And she said, when I go to see the oncologist now, she said, there are 2 oncologists and a specialist and they're just standing looking at it. They don't know what's going on, but they just can't believe what's happening with her. Now, she was the dessert maker at church. Remember the 16 cups of white sugar in a pavlova? She said, when they asked me to make pavlovas now, she said, "No, I'm not going to make that. I love you too much." She said, "But I will make apple crumble, or I will make apple pie or apple strudel." She's Polish. Beautiful cook. And whereas she used to put butter and cream in her dishes, she puts olive oil and coconut cream in the dishes now, and I've eaten at her house beautiful food. She's just replaced the things she used to make with other things, and the food is still very, very beautiful. Now, Elizabeth eats much like I do now. She does have some fruit now, but you know, she's had remarkable responses, and she lives in Melbourne and she now gives classes teaching people natural remedies, teaching people how to eat. She's an incredible illustration of what can happen in the body when you give it the right conditions. It's 2.5 years later now. She says to me, "I'm almost 70 and I feel better than I felt in my 40s. You see, there is a formula, and if you give the body the right conditions, you will get the results. We had another lady come, and her name was Emily, and she'd had brain cancer 2 years before. They gave her a lot of radiotherapy and chemotherapy, and it went into remission. You see, Chemotherapy does kill cancer, but it also kills the good cells. So it's a little bit of a gamble. Will I survive this thing? If the body's designed to heal itself, we don't need to kill off the good stuff. We need to build up the good stuff. The doctor said that she was cured, but a year later she got breast cancer. They came in again with the radio and the chemotherapy and took her breast. They said she was cured. 2 years later, they discovered she had liver cancer and bone cancer. I would like to ask a question now. Is it working? You see, the same blood that goes through the liver goes through the brain, goes through the breast. They started chemo again and all her fingernails went black. All her hair fell out and the doctor got a little bit scared. He said, we'll put it on hold for another month. And then she heard about us and her family put together to enable her to come. She sat in front of me and she said, I know that God sent me here and whatever you tell me to do, I will do. I love that. You see, where there's a will, there's a way. And she did everything. Do you know, the first time her walking was like this, she was only in her mid-40s. She was with us for 2 weeks. After the second wrap, her lockjaw released. She'd had lockjaw ever since the chemo. Ever since the chemo, she'd been unable to perspire. She started to perspire just bit by bit by bit. We saw incredible results in this lady. The people were with her on the first week, couldn't believe she was the same woman at the end of the week. She was with us for 2 weeks. You know, at the end of the second week, she was up ahead of everyone on the exercise program. The results were just incredible. Now, the man that is our maintenance man sometimes does our trips to the airport. He drove Emily into the airport. She was very, very quiet, so she didn't say much. But I was giving her a colonic irrigation on the second week and I was massaging quite deeply her abdomen. She looked at me and she said, I wouldn't have let you touch my abdomen with your little finger 10 days ago. And now I was massaging it heavily with my fist. I said, what were your pain levels when you came? Oh, I didn't want to tell you, but they were at 8, 9 out of 10. I said, what are they now? She said, 1 out of 10. That was in 10 days. So the man that drove her to the airport, he came back, he sat down in my kitchen a few hours later. I said, what is it, Jeff? He said, this woman has just told me her story. She just told me what she was, and she just told me what she is now. He said, I've never heard anything like it. Because he's out fencing. He looked at me and he said, I want to work for you people for the rest of my life. Incredible. Emily was given 3 months to live. Emily lived another 6 years. When she went back to the doctor a year later, the tumour on her liver had totally gone. What she really battled with was the tumour in her bones, in her lower spine. I think if Emily hadn't had to go back to the city and as a single mother deal with some troublesome teenagers, I think she might have even made it longer. But remember, she'd had many bouts of chemo, which are very poisoning to the body, but she was overjoyed that she got another 6 years. But in that 6 years, she got quality of life, and it was really only near the end. She deteriorated quickly, and that was a great blessing. I had another lady come to me, exactly the same age, exactly the same situation, and she's in front of me and she's crying. I said, why are you crying? She said, I don't want to be here. I said, I've never had anyone say that. I said, well, why are you here? Oh, my mother and my sister insisted I come. I said, but you know you have liver and bone cancer. Well, she said, I don't feel like I have. I just want to live my life. So I said, would you like us to drive you home? You see, a man convinced against his will be of the same opinion still. She said, oh, I'll stay. And everything we did, oh, all right. We'd give her a green drink, she'd take a mouthful and just leave it. And she went, and then she went home. And Michael and I had mixed up the computers. She'd got ours and we had hers. So we went back to her house a few hours later, and Michael knocked on the door and he could smell the meat cooking later on. Her mother rang us up and she said, I can see she's not interested. She died 3 months later. Exact same situation as Emily had. So you see, with this lady, there was a mind thing. The mind is very important. Remember what Emily said? Whatever you say, I will do. And what this lady say? I don't want to be here. So there's a mind as well. And I want to tell you another story about a man who came to us from Melbourne, and he had prostate cancer. And he was 56. He was not that interested in coming, but his wife and his daughter were keen. So his wife was about 54, his daughter was about 28. And so I went through things in the consultation. We can do this. And he went, oh, yeah. And his wife and his daughter said, yeah, we'll do it. You'll do it, won't you, Dad? Yeah, Dad, yeah, Dad. So that they had all the go, and he was, oh, righto. Everything we did, will you do this? Oh, righto. But his wife and daughter were saying, yeah, he'll do it. So he had this, fan club in the background that was moving along. He stayed for 2 weeks. In our final consultation, I said, well, I suggest this. He was, oh, I suppose. And his wife and daughter, yeah, he'll do it. They went home, and he did it purely because he had a wife and a daughter. Yeah. He emailed me 3 months later. He said, I've just had a test and I'm cancer-free. Now he's interested. Interesting story. He was just, oh, righto, not really gung-ho like his wife and his daughter were. Amazing stories. What I find when people come to us wanting help with cancer, I find that there are turnarounds in some of the stories that I've just told you. With some people like Emily, I find 3 months is extended to 6 years. And for some people where it's very advanced, I find the last days made more comfortable. And so whatever the outcome, you can see there's a plus. And for a few people that have come at very late stages, they have passed within a few months, and their wife, their daughters have contacted us and said, thank you so much. Thank you so much, because our time at Misty was a joy, and Dad or Mum, sister, was able to pass without near the suffering that we know that they would have had. So whatever the outcome, and I can never predict. Some people that I think, oh dear, they have turnarounds, and some people I think, I think we might have a go there. It doesn't quite. There are so many factors that come in. Some people say, what's your success rate? I said, well, and you can't do double-blind studies because my daughter's got twins and they're like chalk and cheese. You can't even do studies on twins because there's so many different things. And you might have identical twins and think, yeah, we can do a study on this, but one was sexually abused and the other wasn't. You see, and that can tip the scales. And I've met women who've developed inflammatory breast cancer after finding out their daughter was violently raped. So you see, there's this emotional thing that also comes into the equation. And then there's Doug. Doug came to us with prostate cancer for 2 weeks. In the initial consultation, I said, did you have a happy, healthy childhood? He said, no, my father yelled at me all my life. He yelled at me. I thought, righto, okay. All week you could see the frown, and he would tell everyone about what happened in his childhood. After he heard the lecture on forgiveness, I went to him and I said, well, Doug, have you forgiven your father? He said, you don't understand. He said, all my life I was yelled at. I said, but Doug, you got to do it. You don't understand. I said, Doug, it'll take a minute. I was pushing him. I knew I was pushing him, but I knew that if he didn't let this go, he would never heal. No matter doing all of this. So I knew I was flexing my muscles a bit in pushing him. I said, Doug, it'll take a minute. You don't understand. So I backed off and changed the subject. 3 minutes later, he said, I've done it. I said, great. Notice what he said, I've done it. I will define this on Saturday, that forgiveness is not a feeling, it is a choice. Because I'd like to suggest, how could you ever feel like it? The law of the mind states that your feelings come after you've done it. Do you know, all that week, Doug had a smile. No one else heard the story of his father yelling at him all week. And as I'll show you on Saturday, there are little cells in your brain that start to detoxify it and clean it up just because you forgive. Isn't that amazing? I tell you these stories because there are so many factors that come in. So many factors. And especially with prostate cancer and also with breast cancer, there's a hormone factor. Because if the hormones were balanced, then that wouldn't happen. But it's not always a hormone factor. Can you see that? Not always a hormone factor. And there is a cream called the Anna's Wild Yam Cream that is able to balance the hormones. Number 6. But before I go to number 6, let me just tell you one story that illustrates what happened with a lady. She's a lady doctor from South Australia. She's 60. She rang me. She said, Barbara, I've just found out I've got breast cancer. I've got a 5-centimetre lump in my breast. Sorry, 3 centimetres. She said, what can I do? I said, go on the Anna's Wild Yam Cream to help balance that, because the high estrogen feeds the tumour in the breast. And there are many things that cause a disruption of that. I said, and get a panty liner and put some castor oil on it and just slip it in your bra where the lump is. Castor oil penetrates deeper than any other oil. In the lecture tomorrow we'll be looking at castor oil in the natural remedies. If you're unable to come, if you go to Barbara O'Neill Poultice YouTube, the lecture is there. Castor oil penetrates deeper than any other oil. There's a book called The Oil That Heals, and the whole book is on castor oil, and it was written by a doctor who's using it in his practice. I said, keep that on as much as you can. Every day, put a little bit more oil on. She rang back a month later and booked into our program. So she came to our program about 3 months after we'd had the conversation. And when we're having our initial consultation, she said, a month after you talked to me, I decided to go and have the lump cut out. She said that when I came out of surgery, my doctor said, you know, it's really strange. That lump was 3 centimetres, but it was only 2 centimetres when we took it out. You see, reducing the estrogen had stopped feeding it, and the castor oil was starting to break it down. And she told the other guests, and they said, well, why did you have the surgery? She said, well, I didn't know till the lump was out that's what it was doing. So can you see what we're looking at here? There's not only a hormone factor balancing the hormones, there can also be poultices that you can do. With breast cancer, absolutely the poultices can happen. But number 7 is a mineral supplement called Ormus, or Ormis. You can put that into the web and have a look at it, but it's orbitally rearranged monoatomic elements, and you don't have to repeat that back to me. But basically it's minerals in a monoatomic form that have been dropped out of seawater. In my book Self-Heal Design, there's a chapter on genetics. In the last 2 pages it's a description of it. But the research is showing that these minerals can heal DNA damage. So can you see we're looking at it from several different angles there. We're looking at it dietary, we're looking at it also, which I haven't mentioned there, is lifestyle, which we'll be looking at through the week, drinking more water, exercise. We're looking at bringing balance into the gut. We're looking at alkalizing. We're looking at the hormone factor, if it's prostate or breast cancer or cervical cancer or ovarian, if it's a hormone factor. And we're also looking at poultices, which also help to give the body the environment for healing and healing the DNA.
In conclusion, Barbara provides invaluable insights into stopping cancer, supported by heartfelt testimonials that showcase the impact of these strategies. By adopting these approaches, we can take proactive steps toward embracing wellness, fostering hope, and leading healthier, more fulfilling lives. Together, we can create a future focused on prevention and healing.